Welcome everyone to History Gone Wilder, part of Half History Will Travel. I'm your host, the Wilder historian, Dr. Lucas Wilder, and last time Jubal Early fought the Second Battle of Fredericksburg, the Second Battle of Winchester, and then invaded Pennsylvania with his corps commander Richard Ewell. Now we join Early in the Army of Northern Virginia in the Keystone State during the Gettysburg Campaign. If you like what I do, please consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already, join the Patreon page, and purchase something from the Teespring store or Etsy shop. Every little bit helps. Thank you. Jubal Early joined Richard Ewell's corps in Pennsylvania, moving through the countryside toward Chambersburg. Along the way, he passed fertile fields that had yet to feel the impact of a moving army, save for a few cavalry raids. Robert E. Lee, commanding the Army of Northern Virginia, gave strict orders to his soldiers in General Orders No. 72. It read in part that he didn't want his troops to imitate the barbarous outrages upon the unarmed and defenseless and wanton destruction of private property that have marked the course of the enemy in our own country. He wanted the troops to abstain with most scrupulous care from unnecessary or wanton injury to private property, and he enjoins upon all officers to arrest and to bring summary punishment to all who shall in any way offend against the orders on this subject. On June 24th, Early and his division were camped between Chambersburg and Cashtown. He found out that a local ironworks, the Caledonia Ironworks, was owned by the abolitionist Pennsylvania Congressman Thaddeus Stevens. Some of the Confederates, possibly with permission from Early, got supplies from the ironworks. On July 25th, Early rode to Chambersburg to meet with Ewell. It was there that Early received his orders for the next phase of the campaign, as directed by Lee. Early would take his division through the town of Gettysburg to York, Pennsylvania, where he would cut the Northern Central Railroad between Baltimore and Harrisburg. Then he would wreck the railroad bridge at Wrightsville. After that destruction, Early was to join the corps in the vicinity of Carlisle. Before Early moved from the area, he ordered the Caledonia Ironworks burned. In his autobiography, Early stated that it was an act of retribution. He stated, "The enemy had destroyed a number of similar works, as well as manufacturing establishments of different kinds in those parts of the southern states to which he had been able to penetrate, upon the plea that they furnished us with the means of carrying on the war, besides burning many private houses and destroying a vast deal of private property, which could be employed in no way in supporting the war on our part, and finding in many ways these works of Mr. Stevens, who, as a member of the Federal Congress, has been advocating the most vindictive measures of confiscation and devastation, I determined to destroy them." Despite ignoring the general orders by Lee, Early didn't receive any rebuke for his actions, at least not as far as we know. Days later, when Lee rode down the same road, the manager of the mill came to the general and said that the workers were now destitute, and Lee allowed them to get food from the Army's quartermaster. Early got word that a small garrison occupied Gettysburg, and he determined to capture the entire group. Out of the 750 men, Early captured 175 of them before they skedaddled. Early hoped to find a great multitude of supplies in the town, but the bounty wasn't as great as he had hoped. He did find a nice stockpile of horseshoes and nails. A little ways from the rail station, Early's men found a dozen train cars with food rations. The food was issued to Gordon's brigade, then the train and cars were burned. Early pushed on to York, where he sent Gordon's brigade on to capture the bridge at Wrightsville and wait for the rest of the division to join him there. At York, Early demanded $100,000 in payment, massive quantities of hats, shoes, and socks, and 3 days' rations for his men. The town provided 3,500 pounds of sugar, 3,000 gallons of molasses, tons of fresh beef, bacon, and salt pork. The town couldn't gather the $100,000, but did give him $28,000 in greenbacks. Early pushed off from York toward the bridge across the Susquehanna River. He planned to go against orders and cross the bridge instead of burning it, mount most of, if not all of his men on requisitioned horses from the area, then attack Lancaster, then push towards Harrisburg, hoping to work with the rest of Ewell's corps in the capture of the capital of Pennsylvania. However, when he got to the bridge, the Pennsylvanians had already set it ablaze. When some of the flames leapt and caught the civilian houses on fire, many of Early's men formed a bucket brigade and helped to put out those fires to non-military buildings. Before leaving the area, Early issued a proclamation to the people of York, telling them how generous he was, and explained, "Had I applied the torch without regard to consequences, I would have pursued a course that would have been fully vindicated as an act of just retaliation for the many authorized acts of barbarity perpetrated by your own army upon our soil." But we do not war upon women and children, and I trust the treatment you have met with at the hands of my soldiers will open your eyes to the monstrous iniquity of the war waged by your government upon the people of the Confederate States, and that you will make an effort to shake off the revolting tyranny upon which it is apparent to all you are yourselves groaning. His assertion within the proclamation that no houses were pillaged and no fence rails were used for firewood is false. Some of his own soldiers took from homes on the march through Pennsylvania, and one farmer lost 12,550 fence rails to the Confederate Army that they used for firewood. Early's proclamation was intended more to make the people of York and other Pennsylvanians feel lucky the Confederate Army didn't do more to destroy their homes and infrastructure. Early went to Heidelberg as ordered by General Ewell. There he was informed that Lee had ordered the army to concentrate since the Union Army was now on its way north. Early was to go to Cashtown by way of Hunterstown and Mummersburg. On July 1st, as Early was moving west, A.P. Hill's corps encountered Federal troops to the west of Gettysburg. Early was redirected from his westward march to move south to Gettysburg. He and his troops came to the north end of town, encountering Union troops belonging to the 11th Corps of the Army of the Potomac. Early easily drove them away from Barlow's Knoll and began pushing them through the town, with Robert Rodes's division of Ewell's corps also giving chase. The retreating Federals began to congregate around Cemetery Hill outside of the town, brought together by the efforts of Oliver Otis Howard and Winfield Scott Hancock. Early believed he might be able to take the hill if he had the proper support by Rodes and A.P. Hill's men. Hill's men were too bloodied to give any assistance, and Rodes' men suffered as well from the day's fight. Early's men were the freshest on the field, but that division was down to just 2 brigades. The other 2 were dispatched to deal with possible threats elsewhere. Early and Ewell rode to get a better look at Cemetery Hill and came under fire from Union sharpshooters. A bullet hit Ewell's wooden leg, which he lost in the fight at Second Manassas. John Brown Gordon asked if the corps commander was hurt. Ewell said, No, I'm not hurt. But suppose that a ball had struck you, we would have had the trouble of carrying you off the field, sir. You see how much better fixed for a fight I am than you are. It didn't hurt a bit to be shot in a wooden leg. Early, his corps commander Richard Ewell, fellow division commander Robert Rodes, and Lee all met that evening, deciding on what to do next. In the discussion about whether to attack Cemetery Hill, Early spoke up and said it wouldn't be wise to attack the position, and that the main attack should come from the Confederate right the next day. Lee decided that the next day Ewell's corps would launch a demonstration against Culp's Hill and Cemetery Hill when James Longstreet's corps attacked on the Confederate right flank. The meeting ended and Lee rode off. Early sat with Rodes and Ewell in the corner of a fence when some staff officers came up. The 2 men had been sent on a reconnaissance earlier and had found their way to Culp's Hill. They found the position unoccupied. Edward Johnson's division, the 3rd and last division Ewell's corps to make it to the field, was taking a position in front of Culp's Hill. Ewell turned to Early and Rodes and asked if Johnson should take the position tonight. Rodes said the men were too tired to climb the hill that night. Early allegedly said, If you do not go up there tonight, it will cost you 10,000 lives to get up there tomorrow. By the time Johnson got into position that night, he ran into a contingent of Union troops. Unaware of how many enemy soldiers occupied the hill, he held off making an attack that night. On July 2nd, Longstreet's attack didn't begin until late in the afternoon. Ewell, therefore, didn't order his men to attack until about 6:30 p.m. Early's 2 brigades would attack Cemetery Hill. He was supposed to attack in conjunction with Rodes' division, but when the assaults were underway, Rodes never attacked the hill like Early. Early's 2 brigades gained initial success, capturing significant ground despite heavy casualties. However, the Union rallied and brought reinforcements to the area, throwing Early back. On July 3rd, Early didn't participate in any massive attack. Skirmishing was Early's only role on the 3rd day at Gettysburg. When the battle ended in a defeat for the Confederacy, the Army of Northern Virginia moved back across the Potomac River into Virginia.